order the regular board meeting for the Board of Election Commissioners for the City of Chicago. Good morning, my name is Maricel Hernandez, I'm the chair, and with me today is Commissioner William Cressy
Present.
and Commissioner June Brown.
Present.
Next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda. Any proposed changes? If not, we will proceed with the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of January 24th, 2023, the organizational and regular board meeting minutes of February 28th, 2023, the minutes of the canvassing board meeting of February 28th, 2023, and the minutes of the special board meeting of April 4th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved by Commissioner Brown.
Seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report. Mr. Holliday?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioner Brown, and Commissioner Cressy. I would first like to start by taking a little time to thank the following. The Assistant Director, Sandra Sparrow, for all her hard work that she put in these last two elections and keeping the staff in order and getting things done. To Max Bever, our public relations, for all he did and does in the media and keeping the word out to our voters. Our General Counsel, Adam Lasker, and our Legal Counsel, Joan Agnew, for what they do, keeping us in line with the law and everything. Really appreciate them as well. Clint Hurd, Christopher Tomzak, John Powell, and the pre-election voting and logistics department. But all they do with the early voting and the jail voting, I want to thank them as well. Brandon Pickens and Christopher Turner and the staff of our polling place. Karen Chan and Human Resource Department for the help they've given for hiring poll workers for early voting. I want to thank them as well. Matthew Lynn and our IT department. Al Chase, Paul, and our Lance Goff for our ballot preparation. I want to thank them. Sheila Bonzel Johnson and Sandra Gardner DeLay in our communication department for keeping our lines open when we're flooded with all these calls. I really appreciate them. Audrey Lewicki and Steve Zaleski in the community service and our language department for the job that they do with the community service, and our language coordinators getting out in the communities, getting language judges for us, and us getting all these 12 languages out there. I appreciate them very much. And Paulina, Belinda, and Christina for the staff that they recruit for judges and election coordinators. They do a great job, Sometimes they feel like it's in vain because the day before or the day of, after recruiting all these judges, we have so many resignations, but they still get the job done, and I appreciate that very, very much. Jim Carley, Delilah Smith, and Carol Trippett, and the registration department who keeps our files together so the voters know where they are and where they should go vote. I want to thank them for the job they do. I really have to thank Sean Simpson and our mail who on a day-to-day basis, twice and sometimes 3 times a day, was going to the post office, getting our regular mail and the ballots. He did a yeoman's job, and he made sure that all those ballots that was returned that we did receive. I want to thank Sean. And Julio, our main guy, when those ballots came in, who ran them through the Agilus machine to make sure they were all in the system. I want to thank him and his team. They did a great job as well. Can't give more thanks to the warehouse who kept our equipment together. Keith Carter, Derek Hurd, and Deanna Spears. They did a great job keeping our equipment in TAC. We just got to see what we can do about a location where our equipment will be that much more safer and out of some of the elements that we're in at the current warehouse. I want to thank our many vendors that assisted us in getting this election off. And last but not least, I would like to thank my two administrative assistants, Kathy Ross and Cassandra Molina, and Myrna Webb, who is administrative assistant to our assistant director, Sandra Sparrow. They did a great job. So I just wanted to give out those things to the staff. I mean, I thank everyone, but I just want everyone else to know who these individuals are. So in the future, if they need to call about judges or anything, those names are out there and they can have a contact person. Currently, our staff has started our debriefing meetings, going over those things that worked and improving on those that didn't work so well for us, that we could continue to make and have successful elections here in Chicago.
I just want to thank you for your appreciation of these individuals and the staff. And, you know, I always say we're only as good as our team.
Right.
You know, they're the ones that make us look good, and thank God we have a great team behind us.
I still the ship, but they get the job done. The job done.
It's a
I
great
just want to
way
give
of
my
saying
thanks and appreciation.
thank you. Next is the Mrs. Sparrow is not here today.
Mrs. Fair, she's not here today. She's preparing her youngest for college, and they had some things to do today, so that's why she's not here.
That's perfectly fine. Thank you. So now we'll go to our Public Information Director, Max Bever. Max?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I want to echo the Executive Director's thoughts and thank the hundreds of staff members as well as the thousands of poll workers for not just the April election but February, 2 in a row. They really contributed to a smooth and orderly process for our city's voters. And a special thank you to our early voting and our vote by mail teams who were under tremendous pressure for a nearly impossible timeline between February 28th and April 4th, and yet broke new records for both voting by mail and for early voting in our municipal elections, with more than 30,000 people early voting in one day for Monday, April 3rd, which is an all-time record for early voting in municipal elections. And together with our community services team, we worked with media to secure hundreds of stories with important election information. And I'm also proud to say for our advertising budget for the first time, for the past 2 elections, we spent nearly 70% on non-English publications, as well as an increased focus on digital ads. So now that we're past 4 elections in under a year, we're moving forward with our next big communications project. We're moving forward with overhauling our ChicagoElections.gov website throughout this summer. We have released a new website survey to gather information and feedback from Chicago's voters on their preferences and needs that is now live. And also our purchasing team has released a request for information for qualified vendors through the next week. These next 2 steps are going to help us build an RFP that's going to be released in mid-May for a final decision on a new vendor in late June. So ideally, we're going to have a new website live by early fall. So I know I'm looking forward to working on that, as well as with the rest of our team. We continue to prepare our budgets ahead of next season. So we have a lot of work to do in these next few months and through this summer. But now that we are past, again, 4 elections in under a year, we've got some time to plan, and we are looking forward to doing so. Thank you.
Thank you for all your work. That the communications outreach was very, very good during these past 3 election cycles, and you know, I know, you know, you and I talk, and we're always looking to see what else we can do to improve communications and get out the vote among the younger people, among, you know, minority groups, among those who haven't yet registered to vote, and we'll continue doing that. So, and we're always looking for suggestions.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I did forget one last important historical element, but I know we're always looking towards the citywide turnout, and you know that our municipal elections unfortunately do see lower turnout than our other elections. But at the end of ballots cast, the total number of ballots cast, just over 613,000. That is the most ballots cast for a municipal election since 1987 in the city of Chicago, since Harold Washington's years. So we are creeping up, and we did see a better turnout than in previous election cycles. Ultimately, for these two municipal elections.
Point of order, Madam Chair. You keep saying that we had 4 elections in a year, under a year. There's actually 4 elections in 9 months and 6 days. So
Being a
I
little
mean,
generous,
it's even
Commissioner.
more tight than that. And then I just see on today's headlines, President Biden has announced his reelection. So bearer of bad news here. We don't get to rest. We're already into the 2024 cycle.
I hear there might be a convention coming next year.
I
to
hear
the
there's
city,
something about that, yes. Milwaukee.
Madam Chair, I'd like to echo both what Carlton said, as well as Max, and to thank Max and our community stakeholders who, because of his outreach and responsiveness of his staff, we had several people that are now connecting with us that I think will be better informed and connected to us. Elaine is always connected, but there are others in addition to the leader women voters. I know personally that he reached out to some people that I gave to him, and there were over 1,000 people touched from that group of interface. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think Executive Director and I think the future looks bright heading into 2024.
Excellent.
A lot of good things to come. Thank you, Max. Now we'll proceed with old business, infrastructure projects and changes in election administration, including voting equipment and electronic poll books. Do we have any updates?
Just doing the after election truck and the equipment, and as Max stated, we are getting our RFP together for new poll book as well, which the timeline for it to be rolled out as far as having the vendors come in and present as something to our office.
Okay.
So we're working on that as we speak.
Next item is legislation. Mr. Lasker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This week, our office, in conjunction with the Office of the County Clerk, did submit a letter to legislative leadership in support of a couple of different legislative initiatives. This would include email notice for electoral board proceedings. There are 2 bills that are currently pending that would allow those notices to be sent by email rather than by personal service by the sheriff. House Bill 3035 and Senate Bill 299. Also, to simplify the statutory vote by mail certification language, that's the certification form everybody on a return envelope has to sign off on. There's a line where they have to indicate how many months they've lived in the location, how many years and months. Many voters omit that line. They skip over that information, which is not fundamental to the integrity of the election because the certification does state they've lived there 30 days, which is the minimum. There have been some challenges around the country against that, so we want to just try to put an end to that. And also to increase the fee for statutory discovery recount, so that's a fee of $10 per precinct. That fee has been in existence for many decades and does not even come close to covering the municipal charges. Also to require security costs for election contests. There's a few other pending bills that we're monitoring. As you're well aware, there's a bill pending that would institute ranked choice voting for presidential primaries. And that bill, as it progresses, we've met with legislative leadership to discuss administrative factors. There is yet again a bill pending to make general election day a state holiday. And it will only be for the even year elections. It's been in the election code recently as sunset clause legislation. There's a bill that is pending, actually, 2 bills, Senate Bill 2304 and House Bill 2903, which would again make permanent the ability to use the universal vote centers on election day. We have been ever since 2020, bumping that down the road with legislation that is currently set to expire on January 1st of 2024. So as we sit here today, we are not using vote centers for the March 2024 election. Of course, we hope one of these two bills will pass. The Senate bill is promoted by Senator Morris, prior chair of the election committee, so hopefully understands it. And finally, of note, is a bill we're watching. Well, two more I want to comment on. One would actually have the State Board of Elections reimburse the county for the cost of up to $50 per election judge if the election judge is paid more than $100 per day, which our judges are. So that would be a cost benefit for us. It's state funding for the election judges instead of having it all rest on the county expenses. And then finally, there's a pending bill, Senate Bill 2306, that would change the date of petition filing for presidential candidates and all others. Its current time period is 113 to 106 days before the election. This would push it back by 28 days to 141, beginning 141 days before the election, essentially giving an extra month for electoral vote receivers. Something that this board has been asking for a long time. We in the Cook County Clerk's office are hit the hardest by the objections, but of course other bigger jurisdictions face the same problem of having so much legal work and legal cases they have to handle in such a short period of time before we have to prepare the ballots. So that would be very helpful provision. So that's what we're monitoring, keep it posted. It's looking like things have been assigned to a committee and it'll probably end up as an omnibus bill later this spring or summer. So we'll just keep our eyes on it.
Thank you. We will now proceed to new business, and we have one item, which is an amendment and extension with Renbeck Election Services, Inc. Is there someone who can speak to that briefly and explain?
We do have manager of the department, Clint Hurd, the manager of the division, I should say, that uses the Runback services. Runback is the vendor that provides the software and the maintenance and support and training for our two Agilis vote-by-mail sorting and processing machines. We have been using those machines since 2016. We obtained the second machine in 2020 when there was a massive influx in vote-by-mail due to the pandemic. Of course, we've seen that those vote-by-mail numbers have continued. So we still need two machines in order to do the amount of volume that we've been doing recently. So this would extend the service agreement and the software licensing agreement for up to 4 years. The grand total $272,433 for the full 4 years on both machines. And then if you have additional questions, Mr. Moore is here to answer.
And I just want to thank you for a shout out for everything you've done throughout these elections. Thank you. If there's no further question, is there a motion to approve a contract amendment and extension with Runbeck Election Services, Inc. for software licensing, equipment, maintenance, and support for the board's two Agilis vote-by-mail processing machines with an amended term of February 10, 2023 through February 9, 2027, and with a total cost of $272,433.30 over the entire term of the 4-year contract.
So moved by Commissioner Cressy.
Seconded by Commissioner Brown.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We now go to our legal report. Mr. Lasker?
Thanks again, Madam Chair. I want to begin by echoing all the statements that have been made by so many people in the room, for the staff that we've been working with to pull off 4 elections in 9 months. It's been a real challenge, but I'm very pleased with how things came out. From a legal perspective, I really never encounter any resistance to doing things in the way that I believe is correct under the election code. And I'm proud by the commitment we have, starting from the chair all the way on down the ladders. And we've not been challenged legally throughout this entire process. There have been so many changes back and forth since the pandemic hit in 2000. And we always forget that in 2000, in that very first primary, we also rolled out our brand new line of election equipment, which has continued to go smoothly now after these 3 election cycles. So I'm very pleased about that. From a legal perspective, the results that we just proclaimed, there are no races within the statutory requirements for the discovered recount. I have not received any notice from any attorneys who have challenged any election contest, so I think we're in good shape to move on from that election and start focusing on 2024 presidential. Thank you.
We will proceed now with the financial report. We have a balance sheet and voucher listing for the City of Chicago, a 2022 appropriation, number 22-13, dated April 25th, 2023, in the amount of $299,951.02. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved,
Seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Motion passes. We have a balance sheet and voucher listing for the County of Cook, a 2022 appropriation, number 22-12, dated April 25th, 2023, in the amount of $5,925. Is there a motion to approve?
Commissioner Cressy, so moved.
Seconded by Commissioner Brown.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Motion passes. We have a balance sheet and voucher listing for the City of Chicago, a 2023 appropriation, number 23-02, dated April 25th, 2023, in the amount of $6,847,288.46. Is there a motion to approve?
Commissioner Brown moves.
Seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
All those, okay, properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Motion passes. And lastly, we have a balance sheet and voucher listing for the County of Cook, a 2023 appropriation, number 23-02, dated April 25th, 2023, in the amount of $560. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved by Commissioner Cressy.
Seconded by Commissioner.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Motion passes. Now we will proceed to public comment, and we have 2 speakers from USHI Votes, Shannon Dye and Caroline Paplanes. We want one of you to
Yeah,
come
I
up
heard
or both?
the start and then she's gonna finish.
Okay, great.
And I'm
your
sorry,
name
which
is?
are you? Caroline Koplanis.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I remind the speakers, in accordance with our standing rules, speakers are limited to 5 minutes. I will have a timer here, and at 30 seconds, I'll go. Okay, thank you.
So hi, my name is Caroline Koplanis. I'm an undergraduate at the University of Chicago and co-director of USHI Votes, the student-led nonpartisan voting group on campus. Students and young people are extremely important. They're extremely important voting bloc, yet students vote at significant lower rates than the national average. Because voting is habit forming, it is crucial that college students have access and the ability to vote. Since the 2018 midterms, the University of Chicago has held an on-campus early polling location for the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday prior to Election Day. However, during both the 2022 midterms and the 2023 runoff election, there were significant difficulties at the polling location that prevented students from voting. I would like to bring to your attention some of these difficulties that we encountered last year at the polling location. So to begin, during the 2022 midterm elections, the polling location ran out of both voting registration forms and pens to fill out such registration forms. This prevented students from registering and voting. Because this polling location is on a college campus, it is particularly important that voter registration forms are accessible. Many of the voters that come through the location are students who are either first-time voters and need to register, or who previously voted in their home state but now want to change their registration to Chicago. Thus, it's crucial that the polling location provides sufficient voter registration forms as to not disenfranchise student voters. However, despite our advocacy in response to this voter disenfranchisement, in the 2023 runoff election, our polling location ran out of voter registration forms yet again. This failure to sufficiently respond to the demonstrated high registration volume was increasingly frustrating, and we are fearful that these are instances of a larger pattern. Additionally, in the 2023 runoff election, the polling location experienced technical difficulties and consequently opened over 2 hours late. There was a lack of timely response to the problem, and there was not sufficient testing of the technology before the polling location was opened. During both the 2022 and 2023 incidents, we had many students who were prepared to vote, who had a voting plan, who took time from their classes to come and vote, but who were ultimately not able to actually vote. Given the critical nature of voting, we are hoping to work with the Chicago Board of Elections to both learn from and correct these mistakes. We are happy to make space for the pre-testing of technology to ensure that we do not encounter any further technological difficulties, and ask that the number of voter registration forms given to this polling location in the future reflects the high demonstrated demand. I hope that ahead of the 2024 election, we are able to correct these mistakes and prevent future student disenfranchisement. Thank you.
Shannon Dye.
Hello, my name is Shannon Dye. I'm also one of the co-directors of USHI Votes at the University of Chicago. And while we have expressed our concern with some of the technical issues of the early voting location, we'd like to say overall we greatly value having an early voting location on campus and have seen how having a voting site that is easily accessible and in a central location to students increases participation and creates a culture of voting on campus. After seeing the success of the early voting on campus in that way, the next logical step for the Chicago Board of Elections to take to reduce barriers to student voting is to add an on-campus polling location on election day itself. We understand that election day polling is different than early voting, as polling locations are determined by precinct. With that in mind, we would like to advocate for the 24th precinct in the 5th Ward to be moved to an on-campus location like the McCormick Lounge in the Reynolds Club, where early voting currently is. The polling location for the 24th precinct in the 5th Ward is currently at the Augustana Lutheran Church at 5500 South Woodlawn Avenue. This is at the very northeast corner of the precinct, making it not a centralized location for most people in the precinct. I am also a resident of the 24th precinct, and I live in Woodlawn Residential Commons, which is at the southeast corner, and this is about a 20-minute walk to the polling location. While this may seem like little, it is enough to discourage many college students who are overwhelmed by busy class schedules and significant classwork they have to do. However, the Reynolds Club location, which is located at 5706 South University Ave, is not only geographically more central for all residents of the 24th Ward, or for the 24th Precinct, but for students, it is with about a 10-minute walk from all the dormitories within that precinct. It is within about a 5-minute walk from most classrooms and central libraries, and it already has a regular flow of students who are there to get food and attend events. Furthermore, we are asking the 24th Precinct polling location to be moved to an on-campus location, given the vast number of potential student voters in the precinct. 6 out of 7 of the dormitories are located in the 24th precinct. We estimate that in those dormitories, there are about 3,000 students who are eligible to register to vote in Chicago. For reference, in the last election, there were only 855 registered voters in the precinct, and only 458 who actually voted. We are working to increase that number dramatically with our voter engagement efforts. It would greatly help our efforts to have an on-campus location on election day itself, where a large portion of our undergraduate population could easily vote. Please consider this and let us know what next steps we can take to make sure this on-campus election day site happens. And then finally, another idea we have to increase student participation in the democratic system and potentially help you alleviate some staffing concerns you may have is we were thinking we could pilot a program to train college students as poll workers. A program like this would be of great interest to many college students and could aid problems you may have with staffing polling locations. We welcome the opportunity to collaborate further with you on getting this program up and running. Thank you for your time and consideration.
I have just a couple of questions. The Red House Club, is there access to the general public?
Yes.
Because at one point it seemed like I lived right there, and it seemed like it did.
The doors are around like early voting. It was general public was in and out. Anyone could vote there. I don't know if maybe during COVID they had different rules, but as of now it is open to the general public. And everything.
And these are all, thank you for bringing all of these concerns out and recommendations, and I'm sure we'll be in touch with you to see how we can, better this whole thing. I'm not too sure, what about the registration forms?
I'm not sure where the complaint may have came in.
Yeah.
But if we were notified, we would send an early messenger out with extra forms, but it just seems like that the number that have been sent need to be increased, maybe even tripled,
Yeah.
so that they could, so that won't happen again.
Yeah, so we don't use Chromebooks? Or-
No, we use, early voting, we use the laptops, we don't use the Chromebook.
But there has to be a paper registration form to have a signature.
Especially with since a lot of students don't have a driver's license for Illinois, they can't do the online registration ahead of time. So we've been telling them to come with proof of residency and ID, so they need the in-person form.
And, so thank you, and, we will definitely, be in touch.
Madam
Are you
Madam Chair, if I may, my other job, I'm a university professor, so I'm particularly sensitive to this. If I may, if you could step forward, I'll give you my business cards and shoot me an email as we get closer to the elections, and we'll make sure that we can work something out.
Well, and then Max
Max,
Geber
over here.
is the point person here, and Max will be.
Get your
the
cards
one-
out, Max.
Will be the person,
Send me an email, I'll send you Max's email address,
Perfect.
okay.
Give them mine,
Thank you
Thank
much.
Are you two the chairs for
Yeah.
Shy Vote?
Yes, I'm a fourth year, so I'm graduating in a month. But Shannon will be the
I'm
chair
a
next
second
year, so I'm staying on. And we have another chair, Hamza, who is also.
Congratulations on graduation.
Thank you.
okay, next we have Claire Tobin from the Illinois Ballot Integrity. Good morning, Claire.
Yeah, I would also like to thank Charles and Matt and everybody for cooperating with us to get extra information during the past two elections. So I just have a couple of recommendations that we observed as poll watchers. One was in the nursing home voting. We had with Illinois Ballot Integrity, we had poll watchers in 5 out of the 6 nursing homes in the 48th ward for both the February 28th and also the April 4th elections. In general, the poll watchers experienced reluctance at best and sometimes actual hostility, mainly from either the judges or the investigators in allowing poll watchers to observe the conduct of the voting process. Usually the response was, go sit in the corner and be away from the voting booths or the sign-in table. And as a result, poll watchers were unable to hear if the voters were expressing their votes voluntarily or if they were being assisted or prompted or whatever. And at 2 different locations on the April 4th, the activity director announced clearly that there were 2 candidates for mayor, and she named them Brandon Johnson and Paul Ellis, without mentioning that there were also 2 candidates for alternate.
Who's the director
The activity director, yeah. So
of the
they,
nursing
That's
home?
the nursing.
yeah, the nursing home.
Okay.
So they, they usually go over with the residents before they're voting, how to vote and things like that. So they were definitely, emphasizing the Maryholder race was the multiple foot. Anyway, when we pointed it out to them, they didn't even change their position or whatever. And then sometimes the investigators were just sitting there not doing anything for a couple of hours. And on other occasions they were very active. And they were also didn't really understand the function of poll watchers. So our recommendations is to allow all the judges and the investigators to be educated on the rules for allowing poll watchers to observe the elections. And since there's a shortage of judges, it would be helpful if the investigators also receive training as judges, so that when there's a shortage, they could fill in, because a lot of them are police officers or whatever, so it wouldn't be a big stretch to have them trained. For election day, picking up the poll tapes, which had been another issue, it was better, I'd say, on April 4th than on February 28th. The post-election canvass, we were allowed to observe. Chris Tomzek was very helpful. We observed some of the processing of the mail-in ballots. But he also explained to us about the tracking of, when the ballots would be considered on time through the post office tracking system. But we were never allowed to see the actual date stamp on the vote by mail ballots. And I really feel that is part of being transparent about the actual date that the vote by mail ballots are received. And another concern is actually in the instructions. It states on page 3, 4B, each vote by mail ballot that is mailed to the board and is postmarked no later than election day, or 2, absent a postmark, the certification date is a date preceding the election day, but is received by the board before the closing of polls on election day, and on or before 14 days. So these instructions suggest a big loophole to say that at least that a vote by mail ballot without a postmark is assumed to be received on time. So this is in the instructions in the regulations. So maybe Adam can take a look at that. I'm running out of time. So in the interest of transparency, the instruction should explain the details of the various stages of the signature verification and the date stamp tracking through the post office and the ballot drop-off centers. This is a big issue for some voters who are against vote by mail, and as we observed, it's increasing. So poll watchers also should be allowed to observe both the signature verification and the date stamp tracking of the actual envelopes. So we noted that for the February 28th, there were 51,000 not returned vote by mail. And for the April 4th, it was 31,000. So there was a $20,000 number increase, which is a good sign. But it's still a lot of ballots out there. And that is an increase in the percentage. So that, I think, my calculation, maybe I'm not right, it was 16%. Whereas in the 2016 and the 2018 general election and the 2020 primary, the number of ballots not returned through vote by mail was only 13%. So, we want to hopefully make some changes to that whole process.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have Laura Chamberlain from the Queen County.
Hi, how are you doing? And yep, you guys had a really significant run of elections in the past 9 months, and we want to thank you for all of your work. There is a transparency problem. I agree with everything that Claire Tobin has said. We work really close together. So there's a transparency problem in the Chicago Board of Elections. There's a perception problem out there, and there is some distrust of some of the processes in the Chicago Board of Elections. So I just want to encourage you to build in transparency, even more transparency, into the processes. As Claire said, you can make them very clear on your written statements on your website. You can also, invite people in to look and to see. transparency is the antidote to misperception and misinformation. So I really would like to encourage you to do that. Both Illinois Ballot Integrity Project and Clean Council County are extremely concerned about the recent bills promoting ranked choice voting. And we know that the Chicago Board of Elections, introduced written testimony. We'd love to get a copy of that written testimony. Is that possible, Adam, to get a copy of the Chicago Board of Elections written testimony? Okay, great. We heard the Cook County spokesperson at the hearing. So we're talking about SB 1456. And, but I'm here to ask you for more transparency. Max, get on the radio and tell people what this is going to mean. I know you can't be advocates, okay, but you can tell the public how much our RCV is going to cost the Chicago Board of Elections and Cook County, how difficult it is for the voters to understand that their ballots could be exhausted if they don't vote all of the ranked choice, right? There was the mathematician Kenneth Arrow won a Nobel Prize for his work demonstrating the paradoxes with the use of ranked choice voting. Why can't we talk about that? Why can't you talk about that? There's a lot of things I think you could talk about. Can we talk?
Happy to, yeah.
Okay,
We've got a lot to learn about
There-
ranked choice voting ourselves.
Oh yeah, there is a serious misperception. This is a very undemocratic move. There are all sorts of paradoxes in ranked choice voting that are anti-democratic. And for the biggest thing is that voters do not understand that their ballots can be exhausted if they don't vote all of their choices. And it's very, like there were 9 candidates for mayor, right? How many voters want to vote for somebody that they don't agree with at all, okay? But you need to if you don't want your ballot to be exhausted. So, yeah, Max, we would really like to talk to you about, because we need the help getting the word out to the voters. There are Chicago does this right. Chicago does this right. Ranked choice voting is called instant runoff voting. That's like instant coffee, okay? Do you want real coffee or do you want instant coffee? Chicago has a real runoff, where in between the first, election and the second election, voters can look at the candidates again, re-examine their records, reconsider, okay? That's a real runoff. And that it's the difference between instant coffee and real coffee. So Max, we'd like to work with you, and thank you very much. And Adam, please share your comments. We would really like to read it. We were wondering what Chicago had to say.
I can give you a copy of the public document.
Yeah, they're written back.
You say, Adam, share your comments, I don't want my comments.
No. I understand. If you could, because we were listening to Cook County, we would love to get what Chicago said. Thanks. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who had any public comment? I don't think so. I just wanted to check. Mr. Lasker, is there a need for executive session?
That's it.
Okay, if not, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved by Commissioner Brown.
Seconded by Commissioner Cressy.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, please state aye.
Commissioner Brown votes aye.
Commissioner Cressy votes aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. We're adjourned.